Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association. Missouri produces wood pallets, railroad ties, white oak barrels, hardwood floors, and more. Details on the variety of products made in the state are at choosewood.com.
This is St. Louis on the Air from St. Louis Public Radio. I'm Elaine Cha. Many in the St. Louis region have ties to St. Louis University as alumni, faculty, or staff who've been part of SLU's 205-year history. There are also the relatives of people who built the campus, and it's a very particular and painful connection to the school, the descendants of people who were enslaved by Catholic Jesuits in Missouri in the 19th century. Robin Proudie is one of them. Her great-grandmother, 3 times removed, was born into slavery at SLU in about 1844. Robin, welcome to St. Louis on the Air.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So in the mid-2010s, the Society of Jesus, or Jesuits, spent 3 years researching its history of enslaving people. And in 2019, they sent 100 letters to individuals believed to be descendants of people enslaved by SLU. Robin, take us to the moment you opened your letter. What did it say?
Okay, I was living in Maryland at the time, and I received the letter in the mail. I opened it. I went upstairs. I saw Slavery, History, Memory, and Reconciliation. And I was like, what is this? So when I opened it, it just pretty much laid out a pedigree, say we're contacting you because research have found that you are a descendant of a woman, Henrietta Mills, and it went along my pedigree to my father and then to myself, and it was signed by a Jesuit priest.
Mm-hmm. Now, what was it like to find out that you were a direct descendant in that way?
It was bittersweet, I will say that, because Mother Henrietta Mills, I had knew about her because I had been researching our history, and I saw her in the 1880 census, but it stopped there because I didn't know where she had come from. So I say it's bittersweet because I know now that she was enslaved by a Jesuit priest at St. Louis University, but it was sweet because it answered the question, where did she come from?
And was that something that you had been wondering?
Of course.
Yeah.
As Black Americans, we all wonder who we are, where we come from. We know that we are not, we don't come from slaves, but that was a pit stop in our journey on this earth. So, yeah. Of course.
Now, the Slavery History, Memory, and Reconciliation Project, known as the SHMR Project, was created in 2016. And it was by the Jesuit Conference of Canada and the United States. We talked a little bit about that. And it was in collaboration with St. Louis University. And researchers identified 200 enslaved individuals who helped establish and sustain Jesuit missions and colleges in Missouri, as well as in other states throughout the Midwest. So, Robin, your family, you ended up attending workshops to learn about the researchers' findings, sort of in addition to all that you knew already. What sorts of conversations did you have with other descendants and with researchers?
So, yes, in 2019 and early 2020, we did begin to go to workshops. My family members who were living here at the time, I live here now, but they were attending workshops. They basically were talking about this history. They were beginning to talk about what are the next steps. And then, of course, COVID hit. Once COVID hit, I stepped in and began to collaborate with the researchers online. Mm-hmm. So those 200 enslaved peoples, upwards of about 50 of them were our direct ancestors. Mm-hmm.
And is Henrietta Mills the ancestor that you know the most about?
No, I am now what you call a subject matter expert. So how that did change my life learning about this, I immersed myself in the history. So I actually know about all her 5 siblings, her parents, and her grandparents, who were of the first 5 couples to come here with the Jesuits from a Maryland plantation to build the first Jesuit mission, St. Stanislaus, as well as St. Xavier Francis Church. And that's actually where she got married to my great-grandfather 3 times removed. So I know, I go all the way back to the first ancestor, Mary Papaw Queen in Maryland. So.
And you were in Maryland when you got the letter, then you come back to St. Louis. I mean, were you in Maryland because you have family connections there? Like, it just seems like such an interesting
It's
parallel.
amazing because when I was online virtually speaking with the researchers, and they said, Robin, where do you live now? I said, I live in Maryland. I live in Bowie, Maryland. They looked at me and they were like, oh my God. I was like, what? They were like, don't you know your original ancestor, Proudie, is Queen? That's where they came from, that White Marsh plantation in Maryland. They were of the first 5 to come here. So I felt that it was just a divine order that I was on that very land.
Yeah.
And yes, so it was amazing.
Right. Now, you and some of your immediate family members are descendants, but you also connected with other descendants who turned out to be related to you. I mean, what did that say to you about this St. Louis region's history of enslavement, and especially the recognition around it?
It really just let us know what happened to not only our family, but many Black Americans. Like I said, I connected with descendants who stayed in Maryland, and we're also descendants of those, that 1838 sale, the 272 that went to New Orleans. We're also descendants of those. So it just let us know how this nation was built, that we are part of that history. And as a family, we decided to organize so that we can tell these stories.
Now, we had a chance to speak with your second cousin, Greg Hawley. He's also a descendant, and he mentioned that family members had various reactions to the news, but that he's approaching this work with appreciation rather than with bitterness.
Yeah, that was really to be touched or the revelation of all of that. It was like kind of shocking and kind of like, you go through, it's almost like a death. You kind of go through denial. You go through stages almost the same way. It was kind of like shocking, and then after a while, there might have been, I know some of my family members, there was a point of anger because they were surprised. And then after that, the reality began to set in. And then actually appreciation. We appreciated the information that touched our lives. And some, I think, some I did a little research, but not to that deep. It was just a great revelation. It was kind of shocking, and a little denial first, and then the reality set in.
So that was your second cousin, Greg
Yes.
Hawley.
My father's first cousin, actually.
Yeah.
My second, yep.
So, I mean, there are many records about enslaved people, put to labor at SLU and other Jesuit missions in the area. What went through your mind as you examined research material and learned about your ancestors' lives? And then just hearing what Greg said there. I mean, how did it all work together, like in your head and in your heart too?
Well, it really, as you look at these records and you actually see the names of people who their blood runs through your veins, right, as well, it makes you, it brings to reality what they had to endure, the unimaginable existence. And to think that people who say they see God in everything, did they see God in us? Why not? How can you bend down and pray and then turn around and take someone's birthright. That is what I don't understand, and those are the questions. And I want them to apologize for that and say, you know what, we were wrong, and we want to do everything in our power to honor your ancestors to make this campus what it is today.
Now, the pandemic had an effect on everything, including the research project. And as I understand, there was a downsizing of the research project once the pandemic hit. What impact did that have on the research itself? And, more importantly, on you yourself as a descendant, as well as others?
Well, to my understanding, the researchers had completed their portion of the research, and they met with the Board of Trustees in September 2019 before they contacted us. So, but after the unfortunate death of Dr. Jonathan Smith, who was spearheading this project, it seems that everything kind of took, it slowed down. And then we met, then they hired an interim person and moved on from there. And now Dr. Smith's wife, Rochelle Smith, who we've been meeting with, I think she's a wonderful person. And but we are wondering why it is taking a long time to at least give us a public apology. There are two communities central to the founding of this institution, and it seems like one community is always being honored and supported, but our community is not. The Jesuit faculty, St. Louis University, they fundraised last year during the pandemic. They fundraised and they raised $17 million to build the Jesuit faculty a 20-bedroom, 5-guest room housing, residential home on the North Campus. And so we want that same support. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They are the benefactors of our ancestors' labor.
Right.
They're still benefiting today, and we want to also be supported in that same way. And that's why we want at least at this time a memorial to honor them.
And toward that end, in 2021, you and other descendants, you founded a nonprofit called Descendants of St. Louis University Enslaved in order to see this commemoration of your Jesuit and SLU enslaved ancestors. Robin, why is it that you all decided to prioritize formally organizing descendants to work, to preserve heritage and recognize your ancestors?
Well, I actually, if you don't believe it, I am a very private person. I'm a disabled veteran. I really don't really want to be doing this right now. I have anxiety. But my family was like, we really need to tell these stories. Everybody is telling these stories, but we need to elevate descendant voices. There's a concerted effort to try to not tell these stories, to keep it silent. What's going down in Florida, taking away Black History AP classes and things like that. So we decided that it was important. We knew we were in a unique position. A lot of Black Americans don't have this opportunity to actually know who enslaved them, where they were. So we thought that, and first and foremost, the voices of our ancestors, we got to speak for them. They're not just nameless souls. So that is the reason. So we decided to come together to organize we have weekly meetings, monthly meetings, We discuss everything, and we're actually happy about other university descendant communities. We're coming together to support one another in our efforts.
We need to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll return to this conversation. This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio. Let's return to our conversation with Robin Proudie, a direct descendant of people enslaved by Jesuits and forced to labor at St. Louis University. She is also the founder of Descendants of St. Louis University Enslaved, which is a nonprofit dedicated to advancing the public and permanent recognition of enslaved ancestors. Now, a big part of research and reconciliation efforts includes repairing the historical narrative. To talk more about that, I'd like to introduce another guest, Christopher Tinson. Chris is the chair of African American Studies at St. Louis University. Chris, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Now, you have invited Robin to guest teach your classes multiple times. What sorts of reactions or responses do students have after learning about SLU's ties to slavery, often for the first time?
The first response is probably one that's expected of young students, is just, why didn't I know this before? You know, that's the first thing that they say, that we should have known this before. Why am I just learning this now? And then the next question is, well, what can we do to help? And that's usually how the conversation with undergrads goes immediately.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that's because they have a sort of a wide-eyed naivete about things, or?
Yes, and I don't think that they're alone in that. You know, they're university students at a very precarious time in our country, and but they still hold out the hope that they're going to have a normal university experience. You know, that they might not have to engage with some tough issues, but as we all know, those of us who've gone through the university, tough issues are a part of it.
Right.
And so we're trying to bring this to them so that they can be informed early on about the history of the school that they're at.
Now, reparative justice is at the core of Black studies tradition. Briefly, what does reparative mean?
Reparative justice honestly comes out of the need to make reparations more understandable to generations who might not be familiar with the term or who might have had a adverse relationship with the term. And usually that comes with reparations calls for African Americans in this country has always been a contentious issue. And so broader movement folks have really thought about, how do you expand this notion? At the heart of it is repair. At the heart of it is to heal communities, the community that's aggrieved, but also is a commitment to changing conditions to such a degree that the pain that's being addressed won't happen again. And it's also a question of, how do we hold ourselves accountable to that history, accountable to the past and accountable to the future that we want to create.
I mean, I think it can be tempting sometimes to think about history as being its own thing. It's sort of limited to what you learn in the classroom, or even insofar as departments go, limited to African American studies. I mean, to your knowledge, have there been other departments that have been incorporating this history around enslavement into their coursework?
Most recently, as a result of the work that Robin DeSLU, as well as the researchers with SHMR, have been doing, our university core has classes that address the history. It's not taught by professors in African American Studies, but our university core does offer at least one or two courses that engage this history.
And Robin had mentioned earlier that there are other colleges and universities sort of coming to terms with this. Are they likewise making it part of core curriculum for their students, or is SLU kind of leading along this path?
I would say we have a long way to go. I think that this has been volunteer. For some professors, some parts of the university have wanted to engage it head on, but it hasn't been taken up, in a full sweep in terms of what is our curriculum, and we have, this history at the center of it. That's not the case. But there are some places on campus where it is engaged in an academic setting.
Yeah. So one of the reasons the descendants of St. Louis University Enslaved have come together is to advocate for concrete changes. What are some concrete things, Robin, that you'd like the university to do to repair, as Chris has said, repair the harm?
As everybody know, we have a currently a petition to urge St. Louis University to honor our ancestors by erecting a monument and a memorial. It's 5 different levels, types of reparations, and that is under satisfaction, a public apology, a memorial. There is restitution or restoration, rehabilitation. We're in a study right now about the epigenetics of what slavery has done, and to not only our physical but our mental health. So what will you do to do that? So we're looking at like a research center to house this history, curriculum changes, scholarships, and we even believe that we are due compensation. We feel that we helped to build this institution, our ancestors' labor, and we want to be a part of that. We want to be integrated into the community, just as the Jesuits are. Mm-hmm. We are proud. When I walk on that institution, on that campus, I feel my ancestors, and I'm actually proud that they were instrumental to this, the success and an expansion. So we look and we see Verhagen and the 10 presidents who enslaved our ancestors being honored, and I am going to, and many of our allies are going to make sure that our voices and our ancestors are going to be honored as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, in a statement, St. Louis University told us that they are grateful to everyone involved with descendants of St. Louis University enslaved and are committed to exploring how to best honor the enslaved and their descendants, but they did not offer specifics. Robin, you're saying that efforts to properly honor the descendants have stalled at the university. What does a lack of movement signal to you?
It's unfortunate because we've been doing this for 4 years now. We met with President Costello in 2021, and he assured us that something would be done. And we see all kind of projects are being done, and then there's this question of research. There is always going to be research. That's ongoing. And to answer the question, I don't want to go into that about what Chris is saying about the other universities. We have UVA and different university that has moved on, built monuments, and they have all kind of programs with their descendants. SLU has been doing this for a while, and we really, I have elders who I promise them that they will see something. So I don't want to keep going, but it's really hard because I see my elders, and I want them to be able to look and say, wow, this is for our ancestors. Thank you.
Robin Proudie is the founder of Descendants of St. Louis University Enslaved and herself a direct descendant. And Christopher Tinson is the chair of the African American Studies Department at St. Louis University. Chris and Robin, thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Today's segment was produced by Aula Kuzis.
Our executive producer is Alex Hoyer.
St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here.
St. Louis on the Air proudly supports local artists by using music from Life Creative Group.
Do you find yourself regularly listening to episodes of St. Louis on the Air? Suggest us to a friend you think might enjoy our conversations. And leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the simplest way to help people discover our show. Thanks.
St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, providing more than 41,000 jobs in the production of wood pallets, railroad ties, white oak barrels, hardwood floors, and more. Details at choosewood.com.